why statistics are distracting you from growth. Hey, I'm Lawrence Tam here, your chiro coach, and in this video I'm going to talk to you about why statistics are really distracting you from your real growth and why they are still important, but don't let it distract you. All right, guys, I'm here, Lawrence Tam here. I'm in my car, just finished my massage, so if you see some lines here on my face, that's probably why. I was sitting there literally, getting a massage, and I was thinking about this one little thing that I feel a lot of people get distracted by, which is they're monitoring their stats. Now, am I saying stats are not important? Of course not. Am I saying you shouldn't measure statistics? Of course not. All right, so let me be very clear right up front. What you track, you need to measure. If you don't measure, you can't track it, and therefore you have no idea how you're doing, how good you're doing, or where you're going, right? We all have goals, but if you don't track something, how do you know where you're at, how far you are away from your goals? Or because otherwise it just becomes a number you just want to have. So this is the problem with statistics though. It is really important to measure. You need to measure it. But what you need to look at it is more from a perspective around thinking of it as a dashboard. Let me give you an example. The reason why I'm shooting it in my car here is because I want to show you, you're in your car. I guarantee when you drive, you have something like this, right? You have, a dashboard, you have sort of area where your speedometer is, and you have sort of areas of, where your petrol, well, in this car is a Tesla, so therefore it's only, batteries in terms of how much energy you're consuming, and so on and so forth. So these statistics, like these dashboard, right, the things that's in here, the dashboard here, and whatever's on this screen here, it tells you, sort of gives you some data. Well, that's what statistics are. Statistics should be, right, a dashboard type of measurement. Why is that important? Well, because when you're driving a car, you only look at your speedometer once in a while, right? Because if you stare at the speedometer, making sure you stay in the speed limit, which is very hard in this car, by the way. If you stay in your speed limit, just say you're going 60 kilometers per hour and you have to stay at 60 kilometers per hour. If you stare at it, what's gonna happen? Of course, you know the answer to that. You're gonna freaking crash, right? You can't stare at your dashboard because the minute or second by second momentum and movement in the dashboard is not relevant to what you're actually doing. And so this is the same example when it comes to stats. Do you need to know how well you're doing, how much profit you have in your practice, how many numbers of patients you have in a per week, how many how many cancellations, how many recalls? Of course, all those numbers are important. I will talk about in another video what stats you should be measuring. But the reality is this, is that stats should only be like a dashboard where you look at it once in a while. It gives you sort of like a momentum or moment by moment of what's actually happening. But you don't want to stare at it. This is what this whole video is about. If you stare at your statistics or your stats, that's when it gets you in trouble because you're not focusing on the right things. And what I mean by that is because I see a lot of chiropractors, how many times they are obsessed, right, of their numbers per week. How I see this X amount per week, and then they get obsessed. They either have a good week or a bad week based on that number. Well, the question is a weekly measurement a good way to measure how successful your practice is when there's 52 weeks in a year? And the answer, of course, is no. But we're human beings, so which means we're going to be obsessed about it. So what I'm suggesting you is don't get obsessed, right? What you should be doing is obviously measure. And I'll give you an example when I was in practice, 20 years ago. When I first started, I remember every weekend on a Saturday morning, when I finished my Saturday morning shift, I would almost look at my numbers ahead, right? This is even worse, right? It's not even retrospectively. I was trying to project in the future. And projecting the future was this. I was looking at a number ahead of me, which is like how many patients are booked in next week. And in that moment, I had a 50-50 chance of whether I was going to have a good weekend or not. Why? It's because if the number was above, what the patients booked was above the numbers I thought in my head, which is just the number I made up in my mind, by the way, right? Then I'm going to have a good weekend. If it was below that, I was going to have a terrible weekend, which would suck for my wife. The reality is the question I did this for like a year at least, if not longer, where I'd start to realize and going, even if the number was below, is there anything I can do on a Saturday afternoon or a Sunday that would change that outcome? And the answer is no. There's nothing I could do. So why was I so obsessed with that number? Why would I look at a number and let that measurement dictate how I would felt emotionally for that entire weekend? So therefore, I made a decision in that moment to stop looking at my numbers ahead of schedule, right? And because that had no relevancy to my life. And the second thing I did was, when I did look at the number retrospectively, so how well I did that week, this is harder, by the way, but I would recommend, do not let that emotionally affect you, which means that the number is just a blip. It is just like going, okay, how well am I doing? What you want to do is measure per month probably. And what you should be doing is measuring, like, is that going up? Is that going down? Or is it staying the same, right? Is it going up? Is it staying the same? Is it going down? Because the trend is what matters the most, not the actual number, right? It's just like a speedometer, right? If the trend, is it going upwards or is it going downwards? And what you want to do is catch yourself. If it's going downwards, you want to be able to recognize that and then do something about that. If it's going upwards, continue figuring out exactly what you're doing and figure that out. If it's going sideways, then you got to figure out, like, if you want growth, then you need to figure out exactly what you need to do. That's how statistics should be used. Unlike how our human brain wants to think, our human brain always wants to think about is, in this moment, how does it affect us? And then what we're doing is that it distracts us from the real work, because when you're down and out and you're not thinking straight, or you're emotionally being affected by what's going on, or that maybe you had a bad week, all of a sudden you're not being at your best to do your greatest work. And that's what I mean by statistics affecting and distracting you from real growth. Focus on what really matters. Now, this is harder than it sounds. And that's why I'm spending so much time around this. You have to get to a point where you're emotionally and mentally strong in practice as a practitioner, as a business owner, to be able to change the perspective that this is long-term thinking rather than short-term thinking. If you can do that in your life, you will have a much successful and much more pleasurable and more fulfilled practice life. Guaranteed. All right, I'm Lawrence Tam, your chiro coach. I hope this has been helpful. Like this video, comment below. Like I said, these videos are on YouTube. They're on our Facebook group, Chiro Think Tank, and also on Facebook, on my page. So I hope you like these videos. Share this with someone you know that needs to hear this message. All right, we'll talk to you soon. See ya.